Hey everybody, welcome to the episode. I'm your host, Chris Shang. Today we've got Samantha McKenna, who is founder and consultant over at Sam Sales Consulting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. If you say Samantha again, though, I'm gonna think I'm in trouble. So you gotta keep it to Sam.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. All right, Sam, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Sam Sales. What do you do? What is the consulting offering? What are the kind of like ideal customers that you work with?
Yeah, after spending a career in corporate sales, I launched out my own. We've got 20, an all-women team of 20 people, which is pretty awesome. And we really focus on two specific things. So one, top of the funnel sales training that's basically anti everything you've been taught in sales. So we really focus on customer-centric manners first, manners-driven sales approaches that really focuses on quality over quantity and everything from how to prospect correctly, how to use Sales Navigator correctly, which is the line of business that I helped run at sales at LinkedIn when I was there, how to write a great outbound email, how to land, the first discovery call that you have with a client, and then everything in between on all those fronts. And then on the other side, we launched LinkedIn executive branding a couple of years ago, which really capitalizes on my expertise of the algorithm, how to write for a LinkedIn audience and everything that goes into that. And now we write for C-suites of Fortune 500 companies, a few celebrities in there, and then lots of Series A, Series B founders looking to get brand recognition on LinkedIn.
Got it. Very cool. Super
Yeah.
interesting. So tell us a little bit about your sales background. There's some stuff I kind of want to drill into, specifically the LinkedIn stuff. But before we do that, kind of get a little bit of understanding about your background, how you got involved in corporate sales side of things. I feel like a lot of people in the sales and marketing realms end up there like randomly, and they have their own unique stories. And so curious to what that looked like for you.
Totally by accident and by thinking I was a master negotiator. So I got my first job offer was an account manager, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to make cold calls. Sales sounds terrible to me, grimy, competitive, sleazy, the whole nine yards. And the company that hired me really wanted me, and so I negotiated for an extra $5,000. They said, okay, I guess, and then took me, and then I, launched from there. No aspirations to be in sales whatsoever. Even though I think my high school guidance counselor should have told me to do that because I was competitive as hell, really disciplined and organized and process driven. So hello. But I got into sales by accident, like many of you guys do. In fact, hated sales so much that I said I was a business development person. So it took that out of my title on LinkedIn for some time. And, just really changed my lens to be successful in sales by thinking I'm here to solve challenges, not to sell something to someone. And I think for anybody that's struggling with sales or you're trying to figure out how to make a dent in a better way, just show up to a call and think your only job on this call is to solve their challenge. That's it. You're not going to sell your product. You're not going to work your way in. Think about this when you go to networking events, conferences. It's not about you. It's never about you. It's about them. It's eventually about you, but certainly not in the beginning. So for that, I kind of changed my lens there. I used social selling in the early days when nobody knew what the hell that was. Like we're talking 2011, 2010. I used my network, and then, sky is the limit from there. Was really successful, broke 13 different records before leaving corporate America, including first person to ever get promoted from IC ranks to individual contributor ranks to leadership ranks at on 24, my previous employer. And then, just thought when I was at LinkedIn, it was the dream job that I always wanted. And then I thought, what can I do on my own? I keep breaking all of these records. I do it my way. I've never had any formal sales training, which surprises people. I've never made a cold call in my life, which angers some people. And I just thought, I wonder what I can do on my own. So stepped off the high dive and here we are.
Very cool. I love that. Something that I coach a lot about is like the altruistic problem solver, and whatever you think, however, miraculous you think your product or offering it is, like at most, it is probably solving 10% of your buyer's day-to-day problems, if that. And that's like being super generous, right? And so they're dealing with 90% of these other things. And so you need to be able to speak to those just as equally as it is to the pain point you're solving for. So
And
I love that, number one. Number two, just kind of talking about that, making that leap, your last previous employer being LinkedIn, and then jumping off and doing your own thing. What was that like journey like for you mentally, right? Because I feel like, you're going, and yeah, some people are more calculated, some people are a little bit more, risk taking in terms of how they do it, in terms of like stacking up funds and having like a projected runway for how long they're going to try this, etc. But walk us through what that was like for you.
I think a couple of things that's important. So, whenever you step away from corporate America, so whether you're taking a sabbatical, whether you're launching your own thing, whatever you're doing, I was just talking to a Wall Street Journal journalist who's leaving after 17 years of being a columnist and writing her book. And one of the things I said to her is, you're going to have a bit of an identity crisis when you walk away. Like, you're so accustomed to being a columnist at the Wall Street Journal, to being VP of sales for North America for this company, that your title is who you are, especially if you are very accomplished, again, type A driven. So, one thing to just note, when you step back, you're like, who the hell am I if I am not this person? A lot of us go through it. Welcome to the fold. I think the other thing to think about here, like I had not thought about all of the things that needed to go into the brand building and the financial stability of starting a business. The one thing I had going for me is that I had been super, super successful financially, and I'm also really smart about my money. So always saved, invested, acted like I made half of the money that I made versus spending what I could. So that put me in a position where I was fortunate. But I will say, like, even for someone who is risk averse for the most part about everything in my life, walking away from guaranteed salary, stock options, 401k match, all of that stuff is terrifying. And then I think the other thing that's terrifying is when you don't have a product to stand behind, but you're selling yourself, like that is a whole new level of getting turned away, right? So when somebody says no to Sam, they're saying no to Sam. They're not saying no to LinkedIn Sales Navigator or the webinar platform that I, slung for 10 years. They're saying, we don't want you. And that's it's a whole new level of resilience to
Sure.
build. But it was, I think, terrifying. I think the thing that was different for me is that, and it still stands true today, the aspirations that I had for what I wanted to do with the business were low. So the goal, right, of stepping away from LinkedIn and then starting Sam Sales was, I'm going to work half the time that I made before, that I work half the time that I did before, and I'm also going to make half the money I made before. I don't want to be on a plane every single week. I want some downtime. I want to be able to go to the gym at 10 o'clock in the morning and without somebody yelling at me if I want to. So that was the goal, which turned out very, very differently. But it started out with some low hanging goals.
Fair enough. I love to ask this question to kind of like entrepreneurs and people who will go off doing their own thing. But what were some of the things that you went in? You kind of alluded to this already, but like that you went in terms of expectations wise, thinking it was going to be that ended up like meeting, exceeding, falling behind, or just completely hit you out of left field?
I want to actually, I'm going to tell you the answer to that question by going back to one thing we just talked about, showing up to solve challenges for your buyers. Sales is a very, very long game. If you're going to make a career out of this, you really have to operate like you're going to be doing this for 20 or 30 years. So I think one of the things that I've always done is built like my jar of, like, let's say, just people who will always refer me or take a meeting with me or do something with me if I asked a favor. By looking at how I could always solve their challenges, I always felt like coming to them and doing that meant that I was building a better relationship with them, especially because a lot of the times the recommendation I made for what they needed wasn't to buy from me, it was to buy from others. So I think in terms of becoming an entrepreneur, when I went out on my own, something that was surprising to me because I'd built that brand for 12, 13, 14 years, when I said I'm going out on my own to even like 12 or 15 people, they were like, oh my God, we've always wanted to work with you, but we can't. There's a conflict of interest. We have absolutely no idea what we're doing with sales. Will you come over and help us? And I was like, wait, what? So first two clients, right, came from very long-standing relationships that I had in an association that I had. And then when I was like, okay, well, now I'm a little less nervous to tell people I'm going out on my own. Let me post about it on LinkedIn. The doors really blew off. I think what might be surprising for most, and I guess I'll tell you this with a little less humility and then hopefully some humility. I'm really, really good at sales. I'm a great seller. I know how to find value. I know how to drive a sale forward. I know how to prospect. I'm great at it. However, it takes a long time. When you are an entrepreneur, sales takes a long time. So it doesn't matter how fucking amazing you are. I'll use that word. How
Yeah,
fucking amazing you
totally.
are at sales. It's gonna take time. So that's the one thing I would say. Like, don't have these ideas of grandeur that you are going to succeed overnight, right? Like, build that financial runway before you go off, because I promise you it will take longer than you anticipate, no matter how good you are, no matter how many records you've broken, and you will start to sweat very, very, very quickly as you start to run onto that runway. So give yourself 2 years, find a way to sack that money away. If it's worth it to you, and you really want to pursue this dream, then get aggressive about it for the next 2 years of your corporate life.
Yeah. I think you make a great point there, right? It's like, I mean, this is, kind of just anecdotal stat of sales, which is like only 3% of your target market's buying at any given time, right? And so like truly it is about relationship building. It's about providing value add in between that time, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I feel like there when you talk to like more junior salespeople versus the more senior leaders in sales, it's like there becomes that delineation of that becoming that more altruistic problem solver versus like the more juniors like sweating bullets to be very selfish around how to get to the next CTA with the buyer, right? And it just it's almost like it's a catch 22. It just comes off as desperation, and then the moment you are able to shed that desperation and really kind of come in with like, this Zen-like approach towards it, people are much more responsive, I feel like, and especially because this they don't feel like you're trying to win business. You're really trying to win a relationship and be there to help them problem solve.
There's
Um,
no commission breath there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And uh, what about like, I mean, I know you mentioned this already, but you kind of like always did things in your own way, in your own realm. Like, what about you, like Sam, the person, do you feel like has led you to be so successful at sales? Because I feel like there are those that are great ICs and they can make 500,000 plus a year or greater than that, right? And that's their thing. They know that that's their thing and they're great in that realm. And then there's those that end up like leveling up, wanting to consult, wanting to coach, wanting to inspire and then teach and train, which is also a different skill set in addition to an IC role, right? Which is more empathetic, more compassionate, more like understanding how to communicate at really high levels because you have to get buy-in from like a bunch of different people now. And that's the only way sometimes some of these things work. But when did you know that that was something you were actually good at? And how did you really kind of level yourself up in that way to be confident to then be like, okay, I'm going to go from this IC type of role to doing more of this type of like advisory, coaching, mentorship?
I think you have to look at your career as every part of your career has phases in life, right? And so you are in different phases of whether you're learning, whether you're really accomplishing things, whether you're printing money, like and what fulfills you, right? So I was an IC for 7 years, I think, before I got promoted to leadership. And I worked probably for 18 months to get promoted to leadership. This was at on 24, before I got promoted from IC to director. And I think for me, like I was in a place where I was making a ton of money. I could sell this in my sleep, literally printing money, which is exactly what you should do as a successful salesperson. That's why we're under so much pressure. We're rewarded when we do well, and we're really not rewarded when we don't do well. But I think for me, at some point, right, I came to say like I'm fulfilled by helping others, and I think what I do is different. I think I can scale this to other people. So the money is great, but it's not filling this hole in my heart. So maybe I have to take a dip, right? A lot of frontline managers take a dip in what they're paid until they get to second line managers. It's just the way that it goes. That actually didn't happen for me. And I think since I think I made $100,000 by the time I turned 29, which is probably pretty late compared to how much salespeople are making now, in their early days. But from that $100,000 mark and still to this day, so I'm 43 now, it's been a few years, I have never made less money from one year to the next, even if it's by literally by like a few $1,000s, which it was one time when I left from one company to the next. But I think with that in mind, like I thought, how can I get the best of both worlds? How can I lead great people, right? And how can I keep making money? When I was promoted into the worst kind of role, which was player coach. And I hired my very first hire. I went through literally 50 resumes, countless interviews before I hired Katie O'Rourke Bartman now, who's an RVP at Salesforce. But she was the perfect first hire because she was just incredible. And we're just as driven, just as processed, just as, oriented, disciplined as each other. And I was able to turn her into rookie of the year while I got rep of the year on and on. I think to me though, like that, the idea then I saw, well, I can still print money and be an effective leader. So I was getting the best of both worlds. I think in the end, right, I made the leap to LinkedIn, broke that 13 sales record when I was there, finished at the top of my class and my peers, even though it was my first year and I had to build half the team from scratch remotely, et cetera. I think what at the end of the day, I felt like there was something I was just doing differently. And I think being on a plane every single week when I was at LinkedIn wasn't my life. Having to be in the New York City office every other week wasn't my life. Then going another week, going to Vegas and all these things wasn't my life. It just wasn't for me. I think the other thing, like what made me so successful, probably as an entrepreneur and not internally, was I've always wanted to do things my way. I'm pretty stubborn, if you can't tell, but pretty stubborn. And also, I don't play a good political game. So somebody asks me, like, who would you be if you'd stayed at On 24? Who would you be if you'd stayed at LinkedIn? And I said, I don't think I'd still be there. I don't have the chops to play a political game. I want to get my job done. I want to crush records. I want to make things happen. I want to inspire and lead people. I just don't have time for bullshit of political games of like sucking up to the right person or making optics look whatever. I want to get our work done and just kill it. So I think that's part of what made me successful is going out and starting my own business. Like I could do everything the way I said we should do this internally. And now we are doing it at Sam Sales. I'll stop yelling now.
No, it's all good. No, that's great. In terms of like, when you started Sam Sales, a little over 5 years ago, I feel like the landscape's changed a lot in terms of uh SaaS and like B2B, just kind of the environment. And I think we kind of went through this buyer exhaustion, and people are now kind of like, there's so many things out there to evaluate. How have you, and maybe this is like two-pronged, because like I think there's probably one way that you go about sales and biz dev for Sam's sales, right? Sam's sales. And then there's the other way that you're helping to advise uh larger organizations in terms of what you're trying to coach and tactics there. Um, what has been some of those different push and pulls that you've noticed like the past few years in terms of like evolution of what's changed from maybe again your time from your last like corporate jobs?
Yeah, I think the thing that keeps us being successful is the fact that we just do things the way we've always done them, which is the right way.
Mm,
And I'll go back to that in a second, but I want you to think about that person that's always worked out. Go to the gym 2 and 3 times a week, they eat right, they do things like
yep,
that, right? And then you've got the all the influx of people who like took like diet pills in some
yep.
age or on Ozempic thing. Like go for it, whatever, that's you, but it's gonna work for a little while and then something's gonna go wrong. And then you're gonna try something new and then it's gonna not go well again. Instead, do it the right way, build that steady pace, and you'll just always be in good shape for the most part, right? I think the same thing happens in sales. We look for these quick fixes over and over again, right? We scale our outreach with platforms like Outreach. Now we're using scaled and veiled AI left and right. I literally just posted about this. The thing that we love about scaled AI and all this outreach is that it makes it easier for our quality outreach to stand out and convert. So you guys keep it up because the more crap there is out there, the better we look. But I think that that's it. And we have a problem in sales where we're broken, where we've tried these different tactics and methodologies, and they just keep failing. So we don't actually know what works today. You also have legacy organizations, the DuPonts and the GEs of the world that haven't really modernized. You go to those organizations and you say, tell me about your tech stack. And they say, what? And we say, right. Right. Or you've got this whole class of sellers that have grown up in PLG motions, founder led growth, disruption motions, the gongs, the Zooms, the outreaches of the world, all of that. Right. They've never had to prospect a day in their life. Well, now we're like, well, shit, our inbound is dried up. So you guys have to go prospect. And they're like, yeah, how do we do that? And you're like, cool, cool, cool. And you ask your manager, and your manager's like, yeah, I don't know, because I never had to do it either. Go figure it out. Amazing. Or worst of all, we keep doing the same tactics that worked 10 and 15 years ago, and we hide behind those numbers. We don't have the spine that we need to stand up to our leadership and say, hey, making 100 cold calls a day isn't working, right? Churning and burning and doing all the scaled outreach isn't working. I don't know what works, but we should bring in somebody who seems to know. Go to LinkedIn. There's hundreds of people that post just like me every day that have quality content. Okay, maybe just a few of us that have quality content, but that would be great to pair up with your team. So I think it takes some bravery to say, I don't know what works today because it's different than when I sold as a seller, and we need to think about how to modernize. In the end, if we just again change the lens and instead of thinking about us, if we think about our buyers, what's their inbox like? What's their time like? Where do they engage? Where do they read? I think we'll figure out really, really quickly where to be because it's not cold calls. It's not showing up to empty conferences. It's not going to Dreamforce, sorry, and being one of 5,000 booths that are there. It's different today.
Yeah. And you talk about the right way, which is like the kind of like the slower, steady way, which I feel like, some of the stuff that you're talking about, which is like, building up the network, right? Building up the trust, sharing valuable content, coming in and providing some of those insights that maybe they don't have access to, that's going to help them be better at their day-to-days, help them crush their KPIs in some way, shape, or form that's not even related to your product. Um, but I want to kind of hear it from you in terms of like, what does that look like? Is that building up your newsletters? Is that building up your social selling, and how do you do that? Like, how are you leveraging LinkedIn? And specifically, you also mentioned this too, but like now you guys are also like managing those of people of influence and helping them create their influence on channels like LinkedIn. And I would love to get your like insight as to the reason why that's so important, especially for like now earlier stage founders to be involved on LinkedIn to help drive sales pipeline ultimately down the road.
So I'll answer two separate questions, right? Let's talk about what does right look like today.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think one, we're sending all of these emails. It's a multi-channel approach for sure, right? Like keep your cold calls going if you want to. I won't, but it's a multi-channel approach. But let's think about emails first, right? So a couple different things. One, you have to get your email open. It doesn't matter what the hell it says and how wonderful your product is, or if you're giving them $1 million if they just open it. If you don't have a compelling subject line and first sentence, it won't get open. This is where people fail to think about the executive inbox. When you are reaching out to an SVP at wherever the hell, their inbox is a disaster. So if you are one of quick question, Sam, how are you going to stand out? Go to that person's LinkedIn profile, go and read their earnings report, go and look at what their principles are, their values, what they were founded on the company. Find something, right? And put that in the subject line. If you reach out to me and you say something around, I don't know, my little boy who I post about sometimes, Barefoot Contessa, speeding tickets, Switzerland, Nickelodeon. You can find that all on my profile. And all it says is, hey, I gave a shit enough to research you and reach out. Brian is a personal trainer who reached out to me last night. I wanted to know if he could be my virtual personal trainer. I responded in, I don't know, 13 minutes because he had a great subject line and said, great email. I'm covered here. Thanks so much. Put in the effort. The next thing you have to do is your email's open. Great. What are you saying? Right. You've sauntered up to the ideal prospect at a conference and you're like, hello, my name is Sam. And they're like, yes, and I'm like, so I can't just say leading organizations like you use Sam Sales for Sales training. They're going to be like, wait, I'm sure we have someone for that. Thanks so much. Bye.
Mhm.
Or they're going to say that I'm going to get excited, put happy ears on, give them my card and throw something at 90% of commit in Salesforce, like every other rep. Instead, think about what's compelling that you can say. So maybe I reach out to you and I say, Chris, I'm sure you know 100 people who have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I can train, or our teams can train them on Sales Nav. So I can say that. And yes, maybe I have more credibility, right? Because I was an executive there. Maybe I have that. So what? So what I have to do is I have to get around what their objections are. And when they hear something like that, they're going to say, we have a customer success manager for that. We don't need you. So what's the most common objection that I get on calls or when I make a cold call pitch? Whatever that objection is, use that in your email. While you might have a CSM, yes, I do. And they'll teach you how to use the platform. We will teach you how to use the platform to sell, just like we've trained LinkedIn to use their own platform, right? Like find those things where you can get that person to say, oh, what's the difference maker? Why us? What is it that's unique about us? Think of the challenge they have. So that person's going to go back to their sales team and say, you know how to use the platform, right? But do you know how to use it to sell? And they're going to say, we have absolutely no idea. And that's why we're not using it. Oh, and then hopefully respond, right? So that's one thing. I think the other thing is timing. Why, in God's name, we send sales emails on Monday at 9 o'clock in the morning? It will confuse me for the rest of time. Send your first email Thursday or Friday. Send your second email as a quick follow-up Saturday or Sunday, less than 48 hours after the first one, not more, not less than 24. Slow your roll, but ping them on the weekend, ping them at night, go and find them if they're live online on LinkedIn at night or on the weekends. The best reps are going to do the things that no one else will do. I hosted my team at my house for a weekend to do an email blitz. We're going to do the things that other teams won't do. Just go get after it. On the LinkedIn front, right? So thinking about this for executives, everybody is trying to think of how to market in a modern way, right? So do we go to conferences? Do we spend 500K on Dreamforce? What do we do? Maybe do all of that. But what you have to think about is it's not spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on SEO and syndicated third-party content and pay-per-click. Instead of trying to just pay all this money to get them to your site, Go where they're already reading. Go and lead with thought leadership, insights, inspiration where they're already reading. Over half of the members that are active on LinkedIn, I think there's almost 400,000 people that come to LinkedIn at least once a week, are coming in for at least once a week and staying for at least 5 minutes. If you are a director plus level with at least 500 people at your company, you are spending an average of 43 minutes. This is from Harvard Business Review, 43 minutes on LinkedIn in a weekend. Oh my God, you are missing out if you're not there, right? I try to use the analogy all the time. If you knew that there was a trade show full of your existing customers, LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and you had a chance to either go and talk to them or put a flyer, an ad, and say, come to our website, come to our party over here, what would you do? Well, we would go to the trade show floor, obviously. Then why the hell are you spending so much money, ads, to get them over here instead of disseminating the information right there in the feed that they're reading? One more thing and why this is so important, it's not just talking at people that's important, right? Like the content on LinkedIn is you standing on stage at a conference, talking about what you're doing and then walking off. No Q&A, no engaging with the attendees, no booth visits, no party afterwards, nothing with the attendee list. You have to do all of that work that we would traditionally do. So how do you manage the back end of your LinkedIn after you've spoken, so to speak? How do you engage with the comments? How do you look at who looks at your profile, manage your DMs, da da da? All the money that you're spending on PR and SEO and all that stuff can be repurposed to this to then earn that PR, to build your network, to get more impressions every day. It is the easiest thing that you can do. It just takes some time to build. So you have to get started today. I'll stop again yelling at you now.
That's perfect. Um, I feel like the biggest, the biggest hurdle for a lot of these people, specifically, like C-suite or the founders that you're talking about and establishing that presence there, which I think the struggle is a lot of people know that they need to do it. Uh, for the earlier stage companies, I think it's like trying to figure out, how do I allocate what I have limited, which is my time and my money, right? Essentially, with all the other things that I'm trying to do in the very beginning. Um, is there any kind of like tips or tricks that you would kind of give to those that can't necessarily afford like an agency to help them to do that? And the, some of the AI tools that are out there that are what's just like way too generic and doesn't really work well. But like, is there a way for them to go about it where and maybe that's just like some level of consistency, some level of accountability, but like in terms of like how to start, just giving them a place to start, I guess.
Put
Um,
in, put in the time. And I say this that in starting Sam Sales, I didn't even have 10,000 net followers back in the day, and I have 100,000 now. So just to also give you an idea of how slow that build is, it's slow. But I would tell you put in the time. Shameless self-promotional plug. On our website under the subscriptions place, there's a 45-page LinkedIn influencer playbook that I wrote that basically teaches you every single thing we do for our clients for $400, way less expensive. But I would find either the time to do it, or I would hire an EA, an executive assistant or a virtual assistant that can do this work. Hire an intern, hire somebody in college, hire somebody, you write the content, have them do all the back end administration. I myself just put in the time. And then I thought about shortcuts of how I can be smart about this. So on the weekends were time where I went through my DMs and went to follow up. Or on a plane, I would sit on the tarmac and I created short keyboard shortcuts on my iPhone that would say the things that I wanted to say back to people. So sign up for our newsletter, come to our webinars, do this, or even anybody who are the connection requests. I think I get over 100 DMs every single day,
yeah.
and the connection requests are out of this world. So I would just do keyboard shortcuts. I would accept the connection request, and then I would say, thanks so much for connecting. Thanks so much for saying hello. Lovely to be connected. That was a
Mhm.
quick shortcut for me too, to remember how I knew this person. And when I wrote something like that, it was they connected with me and they didn't say anything in the connection request. So, early days as a Series A founder, you have some money if you've raised funding, or even if you're seed, you have a little money, put it to something like that. Because what's amazing to me about LinkedIn versus, let's say, PR, is you might spend $20,000 or $30,000 on a resource to support you for the entire year on LinkedIn, whereas you might spend $45,000, let's say, on PR. The difference there is that you are guaranteed visibility on LinkedIn. And every single day, if you put our processes in that playbook in motion, every single day you're going to grow your audience and eventually grow your impressions. It's a flywheel of success. It is a little snowball that tumbles down a massive mountain. With PR, you have to hope that that spend is going to get you somewhere, and it's a one and done. It's just like a conference. You show up, you meet people, they see who you are. That's great. What happens next? LinkedIn is a tried and true drip campaign of content. To me, as a founder, that's probably where I put the most amount of money. Before I even had our email address set up, before I finally spent $20,000 on a website, I just invested there and worked a lot.
Yeah. Very cool. I know we're a little bit over time, but last question here would just be, lots of things that are crowding the landscape now, also around content creation, right? And trying to like automate all these things. That being said, I have my own personal hot takes on those things and a lot of things that's been overpromised, underdelivered. But, I think like there are obviously parts of generative AI that are going to be sticking around and the quality will ultimately get better. But where do you see, what's kind of like top of mind for you in terms of like what you do overall, and whether that's getting attention for your clients or getting attention for getting new clients, like where do you think that's how that landscape might be changing over the next few years?
I,
Yeah.
I think content continues to be king. And I think what you have to do is you have to find multiple places to serve different audiences. So as an example, somebody just told us they're going to create a LinkedIn newsletter to continue reinforcing their existing customers, right? Why they should buy from them, their existing network. And I'm like, why would you create a second piece of noise? You already post a lot on LinkedIn. Why would you create a LinkedIn newsletter that just says the same shit that you already say on LinkedIn? This should be for a different audience, a higher level, a lower level, something, but it should be a different audience. So think about where your audience is and how you can use those different mediums. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's YouTube videos. Like we're huge on YouTube. Also, it's great from an SEO perspective, right? Those videos are found anytime people search. Maybe it's a newsletter just for leaders like we launched that has, I think, 12,000, we had almost 10,000 subscribers in under 48 hours. Maybe it's something like that. Your content on LinkedIn, videos that you do, thought leader ads, that's a great place to spend your LinkedIn dollars if you're doing that. But to me, content is king. Our buyers, we know this, are self-educating. The percentage just keeps going up and up before they ever reach out. At some point, it's going to get to 100% and really sales is going to be out of a job. But I don't know, it's like 83, 84% of the sales process is done as pre-research before they ever touch us. So my question to you, whether you are a DuPont or you're a pre-seed founder, is how do people find you? How do they know you exist? And how do they know what thought leadership you have and what you stand for? The easiest way to do that is through content across the mediums where they exist. So figure that out and then write for them.
Absolutely. Awesome. On that note, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your insights, your time, and just, providing a lot of guidance that was just, I think, a lot of great value.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Chris. Really great to be here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thanks.